All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 6:30, and welcome to the Town of Batesburg-Leesville Town Council Chambers. This is a joint work session with the Planning Commission, so I would like to welcome our guests, the Planning Commission. Thank you for being here this evening. We're really excited to have you for this planning session, and thank you everyone in the audience for being here as well, taking your time this evening. At this time, so I will call this work session to order. Let's see. And at this time, I'll ask Mr. Sprouse if you would give us an invocation, please.
Let's pray. Father, I thank you tonight, as always, for your grace and for your mercy. And I thank you, Lord, that we are here tonight on behalf of our fellow men and women to do the business that's set before us. I pray, Lord, that as we go through this, your Spirit be in our midst, and that you lead us and guide us in ways that would honor you and serve our fellow man in the best ways possible. It's in your name, Lord Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. And at this time, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance if you're able, and it'll be led by Mr. Balknight this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I ask councils, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balknight, second by Mr. Sprouse. Any discussion? District 2?
Yes.
4?
Yes.
6?
Yes.
7?
Yes.
8?
Yes.
And Mayor votes yes, motion carries. And so our one item this evening is new business, is a presentation by Central Midlands COG regarding the comprehensive planning process, Mr. Gregory Sprouse. And I'll just do just a little bit of housekeeping on this. We're going to, do our best to allow the COG to present. They don't mind questions as we go along. That makes sense from the commission, from council. And this is a work session, so there's no asking for the floor. It's freedom to discuss. Love it if everyone just, let's just stay nice and let's get the most we can out of the council of governments, because they're working for us as well as we're working for the people of Batesburg-Leesville. So, Mr. Gregory Sprouse, sir, I'm going to hand the floor over to you and let you have fun.
All right. Thank you all for having us here, and we're looking forward to the discussion tonight. We're really wanting to talk about a particular parts of the plan and get y'all's input to help us guide us in the work that we're doing. And so before I do that, I just want to introduce my team that will be helping us out. I have Sedanon Barney, who's a planner with the COG. John Hansen is a government services manager with the COG, and Phil Lindler is a independent consultant that works with us on developing comprehensive plans. And he is retired from County Greenwood and spent a great career there as a planner. And we're very fortunate to be able to tap into his expertise as we go through this process. So they'll be kind of joining us, but before we get started, I wanted to just remind you, since it has been a little while since the last time I was here, talking about the process for this comp plan. So we are required to do this as the town, and it's supposed to be updated every 10 years. So we're working on that 10-year comprehensive update to the plan, and there's 10 required elements that we have to address: population, housing, economic development, natural resources, cultural resources, community facilities, priority investment, resilience, transportation, and land use. And so the land use section, so we're going to be really talking about two sections today: the population element, which outlines a lot of the demographic information and growth and development trends in the community, and the land use element, which is usually something we kind of work in at the latter end of the process, but in order for us to put that together, we really need some good input from the Planning Commission, from council on what that vision looks like, so that it can help us draw the maps and everything that need to go in there. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight, is really just want to have a discussion about some of those different aspects of growth and development. So the first thing I wanted to do was ask Phil to come up and talk about the population side of things. So he gave a handout to all the planning commission and council members that basically summarizes some of the key findings from that population element. And that'll set the stage for the next discussion about land use.
Thank you. It's great to be here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk a little bit about population. You have a lot of things going on here in Batesburg-Leesville, and a lot of stuff to be proud of. But specifically, as we've diving into a lot of your information, we've started pulling data from Census Bureau, from state statistics, from labor statistics, and different things. And what we're seeing is since 2000 to 2010 and 2020, the town's population has declined. Now, that's official census numbers. That's what we have to go by. Whether those are 100% accurate, that's up for debate. However, the information that we're getting is that the town has declined in population for some time. That based on this population loss, there are estimates of around 5,100 residents would currently be inside the town limits by the year 2040. And that, again, is if the current trend persists and keeps going. Your population density is fairly normal. It's kind of an average based on Lexington County standards. It's 643 persons per square mile. That actually is ranked 7th among Lexington County municipalities. So you're right there in the middle because there are 14 communities. So you're right there within the median of those communities within the county. You have a fairly youthful population. In 2020, the average age of people in Batesburg-Leesville was 39 years old, which is nearly identical to the county. So you're mirroring what the overall county population age is. You do have clusters of population that are higher than others. That would be with the ages of 5 to 14 years old, ages 20 to 24, and another cluster between the ages of 50 and 59. About 60% of your population is between the ages of 20 and 64. So that's the working age population. So again, 60% of your population within the working age grouping is a good thing to have. You are one of the most diverse, racially diverse communities in Lexington County. You're about half and half as far as white and black. You have Hispanic residents making about a little bit 6.5% of the total population. So you're a very diverse community overall. Your median household income was in 2020 was $50,000. We assume that number has gone up, and we'll be looking at that more specifically in other elements like the economic development section. The county's median income in 2020 was around $62,000, so it's a little bit lower than the overall county, but that's nothing to be alarmed about. Poverty in Batesburg-Leesville affects about 17% of your residents, and 1/3 of children under 18 and almost half of children under 5 are in that category. So that's something to consider moving forward with while we're doing our planning efforts. And again, in 2020, 83% of the residents had a high school diploma or higher, which again bodes back to the economic development sections and what your community can handle as far as new development and new industry coming to the area. Batesburg-Leesville is the 5th largest municipality in Lexington County, but one of only 4 to lose population between 2010 and 2020. You had communities in the county like Lexington, Chapin, and West Columbia with higher rates of growth during that period. So that's something, again, to take into consideration. Could be a lot of individuals, like I see in a lot of other communities, where kids go to high school, they graduate, they move away to other communities that have more to offer. And that's not something that's unique to Batesburg-Leesville. So we'll be looking at ways to encourage that that population group to stay a little bit closer and look for opportunities here. Just some things as far as future considerations as we move into some of the other sections and other discussions tonight. Without proactive measures such as annexation, industrial recruitment, and economic development incentives, population decline is expected to continue. So again, going back to what I originally said, as far as that population decline, is that this is an opportunity to change some of that and to change the narrative and to increase your population, or at least maintain it at the current values. You could strengthen job opportunities, diversifying housing options, and investing in education are all ways to stabilize and grow the population. So as we move on tonight, we have a lot of opportunities, and we'll be talking about different avenues here. And we'd like to hear specifically from you guys on the things that you think are important, the direction that you see your community going. This is a great opportunity, having the comprehensive plan as a way to gauge that, to come together as a group and say, we want to move in this direction. We want to tackle this issue that's been facing us for a number of years. So I applaud you for taking on this activity, and I would encourage you to utilize it to its fullest potential to identify some things that you really want to accomplish. So again, thank you, and if you have any questions for me later on, I'll be glad to answer any of those. Thank you.
So the next point of discussion is talking about, so in the land use element, there's really two pieces to it that we have to look at, and a lot of it has to do with the population trends that Phil was just describing and things that the town can do to ensure that the vision for future growth and development can be implemented through updates to the zoning ordinance, land development regulations, and other tools like that. So within that land use element, we always do an inventory of existing land use and map it out so you have a good idea of the current configuration of the town in terms of how land is being used. And a lot of that is dependent on the zoning ordinance, which is the key implementation tool. And then we take these two things, looking at them together, thinking about that future vision, and we create a future land use map. So a lot of times what that future land use map looks like, it's a very kind of generalized vision for how we want to change or keep the same the existing land use patterns that we have within the town. So I wanted to just kind of explain this a little bit to you and show you what you're looking at. So the municipal limits of the town, Leesville and Batesburg, and the colors represent, the yellow is the residential areas. So single family residential is the predominant land use type. It makes up about a little over 30% of the total land area within the town. So that's the active use areas. And what we see in communities like this, where you've got a historic central business district, and in this case, two historic central business districts, the neighborhood development usually sort of radiates from those town centers. And Batesburg-Leesville provides a really good example of that. Older homes concentrated around the central business district, and then newer homes as you go further out. There is some multifamily residential. That is the orange that you see along there. That makes up about 1.2% of the total land area, with the industrial park out here being within the municipal limit and other industrial areas. It's just about 5% of the total land area. Public institutional, these are the properties that are either owned by the town, the school district, any kind of public entity that owns property within the town, parks and recreation. Those are the blue colors. And that makes up about 10% of the land area within the town. And then what's really interesting to look at on these maps is the configuration of the commercial areas. So that's the red. And it's very typical of towns that have historic business districts where you've got that historic center, but then as we've developed over time, since the automobile has become the dominant form of transportation, those walkable community centers that we used to have are then filled in with most of your commercial being spread out along the primary transportation corridor. So that's why you kind of see that red connecting the two towns together. And then, and this is what I think is where there's opportunity as well, is the green. So that represents the undeveloped properties within the town. In many cases, it's forested or active agriculture, which is a very unique thing about Batesburg-Leesville, because you have pockets of large lots that still exist that are being actively farmed. And that makes up 45% of the land area within the town. So quite a big swath, and you can notice how it's distributed on the outskirts around those residential areas.
What was the percentage of commercial?
General commercial.
He didn't say.
That's
He didn't
it.
say.
It's not on the.
I don't have it. He didn't-
That's okay.
Copy to the side of my. I can get that for you.
No worries.
There's only like 8%
Yeah, it's in that, it's in
It's
that.
in that
Yeah,
low number, yeah.
you're good, you're keeping track. So that gives us a good framework for what currently exists. And when you look at the zoning map, so this is that regulatory environment, that tool that helps the town implement the growth and development vision. And it largely reflects what you see there. Most of that, the vacant, undeveloped lands. I say vacant, I'm just basically meaning that it's undeveloped, because I know that there's large lot residential within that area and things like that, but it's undeveloped in terms of those other categories. But a lot of that is zoned as residential and varying densities of residential, and then the red on here is the general commercial and transitional commercial, which is generally refers to those areas that may have been residential in the past, but because of their proximity to the transportation corridors or other commercial areas, that over time they may be converting to commercial. So that's kind of our existing conditions framework. So what we try to do in these future land use elements is figure out ways that we can think about, what is working, what isn't working with the zoning ordinance. What would you like to see in terms of future growth and development, so that we can make sure that we're putting that into the plan. And the way that state law has set it up is that this plan, the comprehensive plan, is supposed to be the vision, and then the zoning ordinance is that tool to implement the vision. So a lot of times after the comprehensive plan is adopted, if the priority for the town is to update the zoning ordinance, that you want to try to do that in such a way that it reflects that vision that is put forth in the comprehensive plan. So am I saying that correctly to all of you in the back? Anything you want to add? So what we've done, what we've found that has worked in some other rural communities, with this future land use map can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. But we've found that a lot of communities which have a similar type of vision, which from what I've heard in other meetings and talking with y'all, that Batesburg-Leesville really wants to grow and develop in a way that respects the existing character, the existing rural small town character of the community. And so one way to think about that is to really try to preserve a lot of these areas. So in thinking about focusing future growth and development in terms of commercial in your downtown business districts, focusing residential new developments in areas where there's existing infrastructure that can accommodate that growth. Those are all really good practices to be thinking about. And so we've developed some future land use categories that reflect that. So there's usually a downtown development district. So if you all liked this framework for Batesburg-Leesville, you would be in that unique position of having 2 downtown development districts. So a kind of geography that's focused around the historic business districts and can really help to promote things that can preserve that existing character, help to revitalize it. There's all different kinds of tools that you all already are implementing and can think about implementing to help continue to focus a lot of the new kind of residential development in revitalizing those downtown areas. Then there's the public institutional. There's not a whole lot to say about that other than because in most cases that's not going to change. That's going to be on the map regardless. And it's something that is worth recognizing and figuring out, are there things the town can do to help preserve those areas, to help them grow in whatever ways are necessary. And the commercial is a category that we kind of lump commercial, retail, and business together. So this idea of generally keeping the same commercial geography in place, but thinking about maybe there's opportunities to encourage different types of commercial activities together. So business, office employment in the same areas, along with your more typical type of retail activities. All of those things, different types of commercial activities can kind of fit in together within that vision. So you want to be thinking about where do we want to concentrate on those things. So these would be outside of those downtown development districts, but mostly focused along those transportation corridors. Then we have, for when we get to the residential areas, one of the things that we hear a lot in communities, and I remember having this conversation with y'all before, is that within the existing neighborhoods, really trying to preserve the character of those established neighborhoods. So we create like a residential district that we call residential preservation or infill, to where it promotes like new development that does come in town, really trying to focus on having that infill in existing neighborhoods, but doing it in such a way that it maintains the existing character of that neighborhood. So the example that we use, City of Casey has I can't remember what it's called, but it's an ordinance that when a new development comes into an existing neighborhood, that they're required to make sure that they're surveying what that character is in terms of architectural styles and everything that's already there. That way that new development is kind of forced to be thinking about how it would fit into that existing fabric. So that's a really good way to encourage that development activity where there's existing infrastructure, but to do it in such a way that it's not disrupting or changing those established neighborhoods.
So is that kind of like Lake City? They have focused on the facades, especially in the commercial area.
Yeah.
No more block facades. They have to at least have a porch or some type of attachment to give it character.
Yeah, they've done a great job with that, to try to really set that aesthetic vision of what they want that commercial area to look like, and then put those
So it
regulatory
blends
tools
more
in place.
into their residential too.
Yeah.
I understand, was their goal.
Yeah. Y'all have experience with that? Feel free to come up.
The city of Camden, about a year ago, they instilled design standards for their residential uses. And this preserved a little bit of their historic character for infill developments and those kinds of things. It's very staff intensive because when they do the permits, they have to make sure that it complies to a number of different requirements for that. That's the only drawback to having something like that. But other communities are looking at that and moving in that direction. So it's something to consider.
Yeah, and that is a good point. It does, putting a program like that together does take a lot of staff capacity. So thinking about how to make that work administratively, so it's important to consider. One of the things, so another related district, so and this is, a lot of communities are going towards this, it's even in rural areas, so we're just working in Winsboro. And one of the things that was really important for them in going through this process, because like Batesburg-Leesville, they do have a lot of large undeveloped tracts of land, both inside and outside of town. And they're experiencing some development pressure coming from the scout development that's happening in Northeast Richland. So they're after decades of population decline, are all of a sudden getting a lot of interest in new developments. And so they wanted to make sure that as those, so one, as some of those large parcels within town develop, that it's done within the existing character of the surrounding neighborhoods. But they also wanted to provide an opportunity for mixed-use types of developments with a focus on being able to allow commercial activity along the corridors where there's access to commercial, but then on the interior of the lots where the residential would be, to be able to allow different types of residential activity. So we do have a category for mixed use and mixed residential that gives a little bit more flexibility in being able to work with the development community to ensure that there's lots of opportunities for, because a lot of this goes back into the housing section where promoting different types of housing, things like that. So there's lots of ways to do that within this future land use element. And then one more is the parks and open space. So that's something that's always really important to have on that future land use map. And it's not just what's currently there, but if you have a vision for expanding that park and recreation footprint within the community, this is a good place to do it. And we've also thinking about future greenway connections or things like that. So I know we've talked about that visioning for the town before and connecting the two towns with a greenway system. That's the type of thing that can go into this future land use map, even if it's not set in stone where it's going to take place, but just having as an overlay something to show that it's there and that it's been thought about. So this is where I want to hear from you all. First of all, I guess, does that, the way we kind of laid that out, does that seem consistent with what you all are thinking about in terms of the future land use map? Do those categories seem okay to proceed with? Any thoughts in particular on it?
Gregory, if I may, I'm a little confused. You're talking about continuing to shrink, yet my constituents are really vocal about the fact that we currently already have on the planning board approximately 500 units that probably have a 3 to 5 year build out, so that, instead of a negative growth, which was the opening statement, I think that's a very big indicator that with our current conditions and with the county going the direction they are, which makes our developmental ordinances very lenient, all right, that we're going to be looking at a real growth here in the short term before this comes back up. And, maybe I'm wrong with the number, 199 here, 37 up by the police, 115 over behind Ramblewood, and then, of course, we have the additional units going into Summerlin. We have a small subdivision over off Saluda on Ruby Street, which maybe has a dozen houses in it. So, just the premises of looking at a shrinking situation, I'm really concerned about the rate of growth and limiting where that growth occurs. Traffic congestion, which is an element, is one of our big concerns.
Yeah, that's a good point, and so Phil was primarily, that's based on census data, so we do recognize historically the census data shows that decline. Unfortunately, that's
Yes.
every 10 years, so those new developments that are projected, I mean, that's a very good point, which is why this exercise and this discussion is so important, because that sort of rapid, all of that occurring is the reason why we need to have this discussion.
And those developments are very likely to change the demographics. For instance, we have 53% female. I'm not sure that this is going to be a situation where just females occupy. So that would change. Also, the income levels necessary. And I don't understand that any of these are really starter homes. But that's just my concern, that maybe this should address the fact that we're not going into a shrinking situation, but how to control a growth spurt here. But that's my viewpoint.
Well, what about implementing like PDR programs and things like that? So, I mean, my worry is taking away the rights of a property owner too. How do you balance this without removing somebody's rights to make income off of their land eventually?
Government's been doing that since 1776.
To answer your initial question, yes, I do think a lot of people do want to see moderated growth in the community while preserving the, community aspects and elements that we all enjoy at the small town. So I do think that we're on the right track with the revised comprehensive plan.
Well,
About to say something?
yes, Mrs. Sprouse, I agree with Ms. Gillespie here. My concern also is the rights of property owners, and as it appears that we are about to experience a rapid development in the area, and there will be, taxes will increase even the more, and there are quite a few senior citizens. Yes, they may be homesteading, but then those who are not yet homesteading, then these individuals would possibly look at the chance where their properties taxes would be to the amount that they would not be able to pay them. And I have people who are concerned that they may have to sell in order to, or to even consider combining families to stay in the area. So that is a major concern of mine with the rapid growth that we're about to experience. And I'm truly concerned about the infrastructure, not just the streets, as Councilman Hall spoke of, the traffic, very much congested already. And when school is out, it's very tedious trying to travel in Batesburg and Leesville during the morning hours, but especially in the afternoon hours. So I have a concern with this. Yes, growth is something that happens, but in this town, we seem to not really address the issues that will concern the residents who might be in a salary range that would not be $65,000 plus a year. So I think that we need to be more specific and consider every constituent of the town and their possibility of remaining in this town rather than having to relocate.
So, Ms. Hartley, is there any way that we could have other arteries to pull off some of the traffic that's
Where you
eventually
going?
going to build up? I mean, is that an impossibility?
Where?
That's what,
not.
I don't see anywhere else we could put roads.
I don't either.
It was brought up years ago that if the traffic ever got to be so that you needed to add additional lanes, so many of the houses are close to the road, so you would be taking people's front yards and commercial spaces, many of them on the two, what I call the corridors, which is number 1 highway and Highway 23. But it was suggested back then that if that ever got to the point that they would look at taking and bringing 23, making it one way and Highway 1. So you would still have 2 lanes coming in because we have so many connector streets that to divide, to cross over, to get, if you needed to get over to the other highway, which is a one-way street. So there has been thought put into this in the past about how you would address the traffic issue if it got to the point that it was overwhelming, rather than widening the roads, which would upset a lot of people, both commercial and residential.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know widening road these days is a very long and expensive process, and not always the best answer. So one of the things that also is good about Batesburg-Leesville being a historic town is that the grid network that's already in place. So a lot of newer communities that experience severe traffic congestion as it grows, they don't have that grid network that allows that traffic to diffuse in multiple directions. And then there's other options too that are being promoted that don't necessitate widening a road. That's usually the last resort. And one of those, which a good example in Lexington, which our executive director, John, loves to talk about, is the signal timing, adaptive signal technology that you can put into place that also has a really big impact at a fairly low cost. So there's lots of things to consider, and that I remember hearing about the one-way pair at some point in the past, and I've forgotten about it.
It was a big discussion, yeah.
And then as far as taxes on homes and things, you know, I'm thinking about this, but there's a limited number of homes. And wouldn't that be more desire, say, to buy my home or to buy your home? And therefore, the price of my home or your home is gonna go up because there's a limited number of homes to purchase. Where if you have a couple of subdivisions, wouldn't that spread some of that tax base out a little bit and kind of keep the level of the home pricing? I mean, I'm curious how it affects it.
Well, if I may, Mr. Gillespie, every new house that's valued at $249,000 will put about $1,200 a year per se. However, then you come into this, we also have to control the size of government, which is not going to endear me to some employees, but essentially, yes, it is possible. The other issue, of course, addressing Ms. Hartley's, is homestead exemption has not been changed since 1997. It's $50,000. There are revenue per se, and if we control our expenses, then yes, that can be passed on to our existing residents and businesses.
Well, another group that wasn't addressed by Ms. Hartley is the retiree group. And I will tell you that the older group who have a larger home, who look at downsizing, to find availability of a home that is smaller, that is in a location where they want to downsize to. When I moved here in 1981, a big issue that was talked about all the time was a lack of housing.
Yes.
There was no housing, there was no place to rent, and up until this latest explosion of developers coming to look at our town, it was always a a determinant of people wanting to move here, wanting to come and rent a place till they could find a permanent house. And the availability was almost impossible. With these new subdivisions that are coming in, there's something else that doesn't seem to be being considered is the newer generations, my age group, the older generations, really have a lot invested in family land, family heirlooms, family whatever. The newer generations, not so much. And as far as building houses on larger lots, most of the newer generation, they don't want a yard to keep up. They don't want a yard in the back. They don't want a yard in the front. Hence why the developers are catering to what the demand is. And it is the younger generation, not the older generation, not the medium group. So many of our children that move, it's not just because of jobs that they move away from here. It's housing. They do not want to live with their parents. When I moved here in 1981, I was well aware I was not going to be working here, that I would continue to work in Columbia. And that it is what, with the new folks that are coming in, and we have a new minor subdivision on Bethlehem Street, where those houses have sold pretty rapidly after they were built. Every single one of them either work from home or work out of town. None of them came here with the option, with the idea that they were going to find a job in town. Unless you're a teacher, which is a big employer, unless you work at Hitachi Rail, one of the big, larger employers, I don't think people are coming here with the expectation that they're going to find a job within town. But they still want to move out of the bigger cities. So I think all of this comes into play when we look about the housing market. I don't think any of us on the Planning Commission expected such a explosion at one time. We have been, since January, we've had 4 subdivisions come forward for approval.
20 years since.
And that has not happened. We have Leapart Acres, which I don't know how old that subdivision is, Summerlin being one of the newer ones, and everybody else is outside of the Ponderosa. It's just partly been annexed in. Little Creek is outside. So I think that we certainly do need to control growth at some point, but we also need growth. We need the housing market.
So we have to find the balance. That's the hard part.
And that's what this does. This allows you to think about, what you want that growth to look like. That's why, going back to the Winsboro example, their vision was to develop mechanisms in place to be able to work with the developers when they come in to say, this is what we want to see.
So how do you do that?
By putting this future land use plan together, by telling us what that vision looks like, and then translating that into updates to your zoning ordinance, using those tools that are at your disposal to do that. And that's everything from densities to looking at where I was talking about the greenways. That was a big thing for Winsboro. Was we developed a plan, a concept plan for what we call the multi-use pathway plan, where we put a network of greenway type facilities on the map so that they can use that when they're talking with the developers to say, you're interested in this property, we want to see this connectivity put in. That gives you that opportunity to work with them as they're developing it to make sure that it conforms to the vision that's set forth in the plan.
And Mrs. Sprouse, my concern still is obtainable and affordable housing. And for Ms. Taylor, I worked in Columbia for 27 years. I drove from Leesville for 27 years to work. And I don't believe, as you said, that people that are moving here are going to plan to drive that distance. I do know people who drive from Batesburg, from Leesville, every day to Georgia to teach. I know people who live in Leesville in District 4 who drive to Columbia every day and work 10 and 12-hour shifts. And they work for the Sheriff's Department. So I don't know who this new rapid development is attracting to this area, but I do know it doesn't appear to be a lot of people who would be looking for obtainable and affordable housing. That's my concern. And I'm just one person in the pond with many fish, okay?
Yeah, that's
That's that balance.
yeah.
It is the balance.
And providing that mix of housing types, being able to have something that can be that meets a wide variety of the market.
I mean, I thought when we had our developer come in and want to develop behind Walmart, well, to the side of Walmart, you know, immediately my mind goes traffic. But I also had to write a list of pros and cons. And, you know, one of the pros was, my gosh, somebody can walk to work.
Where?
Now, that's retail, but y'all, I bought a home working in retail. So as a single woman, I bought a home working in retail, so it is a possibility. And, you know, and that's one of the things I considered. You know, that means they can park a car and walk. And we do need that work base here. We hear complaints about it all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you know, and so as we go forward, that's one thing that we have to look at is the pros and the cons. And we need to list them out. And so we know, you know, what is the positive of doing certain things? What is the negative? People talk about our storm drainage. If you put a brand-new home next door to a 50 or 40-year-old home, a lot of time that 50, 40-year-old home actually is going to flood the next house, or vice versa. And that's where sometimes the subdivision, because they're held to such high standards now, don't they have a little more control over the drainage? And, you know, that's one of the things when I was listing the pros and cons out.
All those things are addressed through the approval process. It's not a one-time, put my plans before you and it's done. But since I lived here, and like I said, I moved here in 1981, infrastructure has always been an issue. I live in an old house. And so I know about cast iron pipes and having them being replaced, but not everybody does. And when they buy an old house, unless they can appreciate what they're getting into, sometimes they're really surprised. And there are surprises with new construction as well, so.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And there have been some
It's an
mistakes.
expensive thing, sure.
Yeah.
One thing that was discussed at the last time we had this discussion that was a big priority that everybody seemed to agree with, which I think gets into some of this, is having a pre-development review team in place with all of the different parties involved to ensure that, you know, what is being proposed can be accommodated by the existing infrastructure, and if not, what is needed in order for it to.
Because in the past, what we have found is when we've had people who wanted to build a subdivision, and they've come to us, and we started to tell them, you're going to have to do this, this, and this. They threw up their hands and said, well, forget it.
But that was usually a minor subdivision.
Well,
It was, you know,
we had a couple that wanted to come in, and, you know, we mentioned sidewalks, and they were like, what? So, you know, just the steps they have to go through scared them off.
So I guess what we can be doing is, I mean, be thinking about, like, what are some opportunities to put tools in place to help, as these developments are occurring, to help, you know, really being a part of that process and working with them. Those are the types of things, as we think about those, evaluate them, listing them in the plan that the town can start to implement, that will help put some of these safeguards in place as we move forward. So, I mean, that's definitely something we can be looking at and trying to work on. Any other thoughts?
I have a question that you may not can answer, but I would like to know the council's part in this, as well as the planning commission's part in this. Do they overlap? Do they have different responsibilities in developing the comprehensive plan? I know the ordinances of the town really need to be reviewed, as well as the zoning ordinances. But where does their responsibilities lie versus our responsibilities in this process?
So the state law is very clear that the development of the comprehensive plan is the responsibility of the planning commission. But after you develop it, you recommend it for approval by council. So that's why these joint sessions are useful, so that we can have this discussion, we can get their input while we're getting your input, so that as we move forward, and you all are working through your process, by the time you're ready to recommend it for approval, that council has also been a
Aware.
part of that planning, yeah. Anything to add?
What's a realistic timeline to accomplish this? Because I think we've all been wanting to get in there and actually work on this, and it's kind of just been a lot of, moving the goalposts.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, so what we've got several elements drafted, and what we were wanting to ask was, how you want to proceed in reviewing this. Like a lot of times what we'll do is we'll say the next planning commission meeting, and provide you with a draft of 3 elements, give you time to look at it, and discuss those things, and then move on to the next 3. As opposed to us just working on it, having a couple of these sessions, and then giving you the whole thing to look at and have to wade through.
Because we do have a subdivision training program coming
Correct.
up. That's
Yes.
our next step. And that's been like a red flag for us, so.
Yeah.
But then
What's the
what?
date of that?
After that, what would be next?
September 10th.
So are you talking on this, the comprehensive plan that we still have in place now, the one from 2008? Are you talking about taking it and dissecting it and presenting different proposals for each one of the things that are laid out in there? Or similar to what you presented us with tonight, an overview of what we're covering? I'm not real clear about.
The actual draft, updated drafts of each element.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which would have all that information in it. So that was just a summary of what is in the population element. But it's ready for your review.
I mean, that's a lot of ordinances to go through, and I was thinking, I mean, what do we do? Do we divide and conquer? Do we break down into groups? And
It makes sense.
You take part of this, a group of 3 takes part of the ordinances, another group
That
of
would
3
work
takes part of
better.
it.
Well, we're not tackling the ordinances yet.
Yeah.
It's tackling the comprehensive plan section.
Through the ordinances is what.
Well, I think that's the next step, once we get the plan.
The plan in place.
Yeah.
It's addressing the ordinance to match the plan.
So realistically, we can review the first 3 phases of the revised comprehensive plan at our next session, if we
Yeah.
decided to. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm in favor of that. I'll
Yeah.
let everybody else.
So maybe just repeat the process, just to kind of be clear. Maybe just review what was done, and we're here tonight, and then what's next.
Yeah, so this discussion is helpful to us, and from at least what we laid out in terms of those categories, we will take back and start working on that future land use map. And that will come a little bit later, because we'll build that out. We wanted to give you an opportunity to provide your input and tell you what we're thinking. So, but as far as the next step, so we've got population, resilience, and priority investment ready for review. So we can bring those to the planning commission, have you all look at them, provide comments, and then move on to the next 3 or 4 elements. And then basically do that until we get through all 10, put the full draft together, and hopefully by that time, you all will have had provided any input you wanted, any changes, and be ready to make a recommendation to the council for approval.
Okay, because we agreed that we were going to meet and have like a workshop, and that way we would put on paper addition, changes, etc.
And I mean, in the past, I know we had that type of planning board. And this year, that's gonna focus is how to, like you said, we keep trying to put it on the agenda, and it's,
Yes.
Okay.
It's implementing it, and I think this is a huge step forward. It's-
and then to carry it through an election year to make sure that next year too, you know, because you're gonna lose part of your board. So how do you carry it through?
Well, and the COG helps us do that. I mean, he's not elected.
You're not going to leave us, huh?
I've been here for 23 years.
You haven't run them off yet, I don't think.
And if not, we've got John and Bill and Seth and I'm take over.
I have one other question, Mr. Sprouse, about the green section, the undeveloped, the natural resources farmland. So when the planning look at this in their next meeting to come up with what they're going to present, are they going to be considering elimination of the green in providing more housing? Or will they work, was this a question whether they would totally want to eliminate or whether they would leave some of it available so that we could have some natural resources in the area?
Well, those would be PDR programs then.
Yeah, and that's one category that's a hard one to kind of put down. But we do, there's the parks and open space category. And it could just be, we leave a lot of that's there as open space, which provides an opportunity, not saying it has to stay that way, but this future land use map is a concept that allows for different types of uses. So a lot of times what we'll do is under these future land use categories that we develop, we'll have compatible zoning districts. So this is all already zoned residential. So that we may have it shown on the map as something that, is vacant land that could be allow residential, but also needs to be considered in terms of its natural resources or agricultural resources.
And I can understand that because the property owners could decide that they want to sell it to some developer. But I think I'd like to see our zoning consider this, that the less green space you have, there is more potential for a lot of flooding when there's severe rains, because there's nothing there to stop the rain, to back it up. So you're going to open up the door where there could be, if you put in residential areas into that particular space, you could have a flood problem.
So you're thinking about the landscaping
I'm
ordinances
thinking,
and things
yeah.
like that?
Mhm.
And the good thing is with new neighborhoods, you have all the retention ponds and everything else as well.
Hopefully.
So a lot of that runoff is going into a planned for pond that's required by law.
By state law.
And that hasn't been
True.
there before.
True, but then there
It
is,
hasn't been there before.
Right.
Right.
So it's gonna-
that's it. It wasn't there before, that's right.
There's been a big discussion with flooding and everything, that new one over here, they have retention ponds and everything that's gonna catch water.
And they have wetlands too.
They do have wetlands, even the one behind Ramblewood has
wetland.
wetlands.
Yeah, that's
as
a
well, so, and
serious,
They cannot encroach on those at all.
that's right.
So, I know most everybody on the planning commission, none of us really wanted to go forward with a lot of these, necessarily this number, the large number
At one time.
at one time. But unfortunately, our hands are kind of tied on that. Because as long as they meet the ordinances, we can't do much. It's kind of like the post office, it's a chips. So if they fit, we had to ship it, so.
We have to respect their legal rights.
And, you know, I know there's case law, I believe it was in Kershaw County, where a bunch of residents, public, whatever, didn't want anybody, they didn't want a development to come into town, and the planning commission denied it. They got sued, they lost, and development came anyways. And I know.
Adding expense to that.
I know we don't want to have to pay out that expense of going to court. I mean, that's enough money, you know. Again, I don't know budget. I don't deal with the budget here. But, I know we don't want to pay out of pocket for any of that to come back on us. So, obviously there are some fights that we have, some fights we don't. One of the big fights we had with the Walmart was, the developer didn't want to do the sidewalks. Of course, they don't have one builder, they have multiple builders, potentially, and we refused to allow that to happen. We told the developer he had to put sidewalks in, period, point blank and simple, because if you have 4 builders and 2 builders don't want to put in sidewalks, then we have, you know, 100 houses with a sidewalk in front of them and another 99 that don't, so. I mean, we're trying to do what we can, but obviously we got to get through the comprehensive plan, and then we can start diving into recommendations on the ordinance changes, so we can potentially move in the direction that most of us won't. We want growth, but we want sustainable growth, and I think that's all. You know, everybody wants grocery stores, but unfortunately, we have to get people here in order for those grocery stores, and then on top of that, where are you going to put a new grocery store if an Aldi's is small as it is, you know, were to say, come in town and say, all right, I want to put an Aldi's here. Where do we put it? I don't know.
And eventually you have to start looking at what they call floating.
If a Lowe's, I mean, I know,
for
Lord help us if the Lowe's comes here, but,
It's not
or
coming.
Publix, you know, they're
Not coming.
large. I mean,
They're not coming.
That's
there's
not
nowhere-
happening without the numbers.
Right,
There-
right. And I mean, it's nothing, no grocery store is gonna come here without the numbers, obviously, but,
I mean, for a Publix to move into Red Bank when they did, they knew about Bloomfield. I think they followed that's why they went there. Maybe.
On that question, you mentioned zoning ordinance updates, changes. Are there specific things, just, you know, right now, as we're thinking ahead to that you all have encountered in the existing zoning ordinance?
lot size definitely for us, for the
Right,
number of,
Houses per the lot size.
per lot,
How do you-
per 1 acre lot, I guess we could go
Right.
that route.
But how do we balance it where we have more larger lots, but we also have a certain amount of smaller lots for people that don't want those?
Well, you need to define what is developable, what is a developable section of land. If you've got 25 acres, how much of it is really classified as development, which will determine the number of houses. For instance, you actually have 13.6 houses per acre of actual land when you look at the development down here behind McDonald's. You know, and that's based on a lot that's 25 foot wide, 115 foot, 155 foot long. And that comes out to be 13.6 per actual.
We did this actually did come up for planning commission. It was, it came down to a matter of interpretation as to what was considered developable area. The ordinance had a specific language, I can't remember what section it was, but the developer tried to incorporate the wetlands and like total acreage into considering what was truly developable. So we told them, you know, we reviewed that and we told them that they're incorrect in that, and they kind of pushed us on that.
Because it was a conservation neighborhood.
Correct, and I think that needs to be clarified. I mean, technically, interpretation is a matter that the courts usually handle, but I think we can just kind of streamline that by specifying exactly in that ordinance what we consider what the language.
Developable land.
So we would like to look at that one.
And then we've had developers that, they're trying to tell us what our county ordinances, and we have our municipal ordinances, and that's been a little bit of a battle.
I personally have a concern about the property that's in the middle of town, which was addressed years ago about when there was talk of rezoning, and that's where the old Burlington plant was. And it is still zoned industrial. And I know in the comprehensive plans before, that was to move industrial to the industrial park, to move it out of town. But I do think that's something that needs to be addressed right away before, because if somebody comes to us now, and I know it was talked about putting a solar farm there, if they meet all their criteria, because it is still zoned industrial, we have to approve it. And I don't think there's anybody that, in town, that wants a solar farm in the middle of town.
It's not big enough anyway.
They did go through remediation with DHEC, but my last communication was that they had gotten improvements from DHEC.
Because it's sat for over 10 years, and usually isn't that, there's a certain time
I don't
period
know
or
the
something.
timeframe, but I do know they went through a remediation process with DHEC.
But it is for sale now, that property. Do you know how many acres it is? Eight acres?
Like 14.
13.6, 13.7.
Yeah.
And if we were to adopt the county solar farm ordinance, if we were to adopt the county solar farm ordinance with the 50-foot setbacks, that would make that not a very viable piece of property. So you could be
But that's
part of
another
the,
if
well,
we accept.
I can't speak for rest of council, but
Right.
bring an ordinance and we'll look at it. I'll look at it.
Okay.
All right.
Any other things that jump out as being problematic that?
Do we have to eventually address tiny homes?
I don't know if we have to, but that's kind of a good
What were you
segue.
saying? She said Johnston has it.
That's kind of a good segue into things that I was thinking about in the back. We'll be providing you with a number of different recommendations. In the housing section, I've heard a lot of tonight about housing. So that, as you're talking, my wheels are turning with different things we need to add in there. And we will be making proposals to you. It could be about tiny homes, it could be about aging in place, which could be accessory dwelling units and all different kinds of things like that. We will make our recommendations based on the data that we are seeing as well as what we're seeing in other communities. But that does not mean that you need to adopt that. If you guys are the experts, you are appointed and you are elected based on your background and because of your knowledge. And so you're the experts on the information that we provide to you. So we want you to look through that information. We want you to tear it apart, make recommendations, say, I don't think this will work in Batesburg-Leesville, or you haven't touched on this issue that's really important to our community. We may just not know about it. So we hope that you will take the information we provide to you and give us feedback, and we will add it, subtract from it, do whatever you need to, because at the end of the day, this isn't, the Council of Governments plan. This is Batesburg-Leesville's plan, and this is what you will be using for the next 5 to 10 years to guide your development process. And your developers will be looking at this and say, back in 2025 and 2026, this is what the community said that they wanted. So we're going to bring this idea to be considered. And if they're bringing you something that you said that in 2025 that you wanted, and then you say, no, that's not going to work, then we didn't do our job well.
Well, I mean, we did not see these 4 subdivisions coming in. We were surprised by that. So, that'll be the next thing. Somebody will say, well, we want to build this, and I'd like to at least get a little ahead of it.
That's right.
And another thing that, back in 2006, there was a real popularity around about live to work. You lived upstairs, you had a small business downstairs. In Batesburg, on the Batesburg side, not the Leesville side so much, because they're limited, the number of upstairs, the two-story buildings. But Batesburg has the number of two-story buildings that the upstairs is always vacant. Now, my husband and I did do, we of course had to go to the Board of Appeals and get a variance to do that, but we did, on one of the buildings, we did 3 apartments upstairs and 4 commercial spaces downstairs. Nobody, it was not, and nobody has ever lived upstairs and worked downstairs. But they all have, we've always had them rented, both spaces. But I think that's something else to look at in the downtown
That's what Lake City did.
Batesburg district, is because I said there's a number of two-story buildings that are always, the upstairs is vacant.
And if you've got people living upstairs, you have less crime too, because you've always got people more watching out. And
Any other questions?
As far as your schedule, you're wanting to take these in chunks, is
Right.
what I heard. What we'll do is we'll move in, unless you have a specific time frame that you want to have this completed, we'll work on your schedule and provide you with the first grouping of those, and you can take a month, 2 months, however long you want to evaluate those. Give us the comments, and then we'll have those provided back to you and work on the next set of sections. So again, we'll work at your schedule as to how fast or slow you want to move forward on this. Going back to your questions about the ordinance changes, in a perfect world, we would like for you to look through all the information within the conference plan, make the recommendations through that, and then implement those recommendations, which would be modification to landscaping standards or stormwater standards or whatever the issue is that you want to address. However, if there's a situation that needs to be taken care of immediately, certainly would encourage you to make those modifications as we're going through the conference plan, because we're working on the plan doesn't mean development stops.
Right.
So you don't have to wait on this process.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate your time and all the work that you put in. So thank you for being here. And of course, no one has to run away, but I will entertain a motion to adjourn from my council.
So moved.
Mr. Proust, have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Hall, any discussion? All right, without objection, we are adjourned.